John to the first show here on the TTP. So welcome, John.
Hey Tyler, thanks for having me.
I think I just actually had my mic muted during that entire intro, so I might have been talking with no audio, which would explain
I,
why you got confused when I brought you on.
yeah, you were just like, hey, and I'm like, hey, I'm here.
Everybody's here. All right, so that was a fun fail. Starting off
Yeah.
good. All right, so welcome to the show, John. So quickly give yourself an introduction to everybody to know where you come from and what you do.
Well, I do a lot of things, but I come from down east, so a little farther east than you guys up in the GTA, down in the Atlantic provinces, down here in Nova Scotia. Uh, been playing paintball for probably, oh God, 20 years, I would say, almost. Um, magfed and pump and pistols and speedball. I've kind of dabbled in just about all of the areas.
Yeah.
I've kind of played into a little more magfed now. I like it a little more. It brings a challenge, so that's kind of where I've sat. Kind of trying to grow the magfed community as a
Mm-hmm.
whole, and just kind of go from there. Is really me in a nutshell. To be
the
absolutely honest.
it's all good, nice and easy.
Oh,
so
well,
so you mentioned that you play all the styles. So like right now you're mostly doing Magfed or other things. So like what got you started? Like what was your play style when you first started playing?
when I first started playing, was probably like woods ball, basically 98 custom, with a sniper 98 kit,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of went from there. To be honest, it just started hopper ball in the woods with some friends, and met some good guys that actually I still ball with today, and met some good guys. Yeah, then grew from there, and then tried speedball out for a while. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Played, then got really hooked on pistol. I got a PT professional, um, from one of the guys at the field, and fell in love with it. And I put everything aside and just played with that PT professional.
Okay.
Round tubes and a PT, and I don't know that there was something about the challenge of knowing I had limited ammo, like
Mm-hmm.
compared to a 250 round hopper. That just kind of resonated in my head, and that kind of made me go, I have to be a better player.
Mm-hmm.
I can't rely on sheer numbers, and I had to think about how I moved. I had to think about all my shots. I had to count every one, know when to reload. I had 12 grams, so I had to calculate into the play field for like when I should reload a 12 gram or try to like tactically reload a 12 gram so I didn't get ruined. Um, but yeah, it kind of made me go. It really drove home for me the idea that players make guns, guns don't make players.
Yeah.
Um, and that goes true for anything. Like you make the marker, it doesn't make you. It definitely helps. Like it can help you out, and but I make it what it is, and it's only as good as me.
Yep, very true. Well, we just actually came from a game yesterday in the GTA region. We had our Magfed pickup league, and it was Mag versus Pump. And first couple games, I know everyone's gonna be shocked by this. The Pump guys were rocking our asses because they were not scared to be aggressive, and then the Magfed guys had the right players on the field after that, and definitely it evened out to a fairly good give and take. But it was surprising that with people just in flashier gear or markers and masks, we noticed who was up front and who wasn't up front more
Yep.
often than not. So you'll find those trends there. And like you said, like it's not, there isn't a play style that's better. There's just play styles that are. So
Yeah, I agree with that statement a lot. Like we take from every aspect of the variety of paintball. Like I mean, we've categorized them a lot. Like we get mag fed, and then we got pump, and then we got pistol, and then we got speedball. And like the reality of it is, it's paintball. And we just adjust and take pieces of every little bit of that and make your own play style. Like, because
Exactly.
we could play pistols, for example. Me and you could be pistol players, and we could be two very different pistol players in play style, but yet, you know,
Be the same marker.
same marker, right?
Same style. Yeah. Which perfect segue into our topics for tonight. We're talking Milsim versus scenario versus big game discussion in paintball all together, which will be fun for me and John because I've the only style of paintball I haven't played is pump. I have my TIPX pistol. I have my Didam. I have my proto reflex rail with the electric hopper. I've run the box mag on the Didam, like everything except for pump.
Oh, you poor bastard! You're missing out on you're missing out on so much fun.
Which is funny because I'm like I keep looking at the KP3 as like a pump marker, and I'm like I want to, but there's a couple other things I want to get first before I have another marker that I have to stop and look and go, what do I want to use today?
I know that feeling. My gear bag does the same thing. I'm like, what am I feeling today?
Yeah. Well, one of the jokes is that like people always rib me at the local field because it's a very scenario field, and I'll show up with my speedball marker, my 150 gravity hopper, and they're like, "Oh, you're using that today?" And I'm like, "I just don't want to load mags. I'm having a lazy day." Like not lazy on the field, but the staging area. I'm like, I don't want to load the mag, put it in my vest. I'm like, I just want to run t-shirt, pod pack, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah, and I get that way with tubes, because I can just literally scoop in 10-round tubes in a bag of paint, and then you just cap them. Right?
Yep.
And then you're just like bloop bloop bloop, plug them
All
away,
done.
and yeah, I'm done. I'm like, let's go. I only need 30 rounds.
Exactly. So let's start with scenario paintball and
Okay.
kind of where it came from. So I'm going to go first on scenario paintball, and I think it's the wider version of what paintball kind of is, in that's woods ball with story modes is scenario paintball to me. Now you can do it on air bunkers and stuff like that for sure, but I think that's where it really came from, was that there's your tournament speedball, there's the guys in the woods ball tournaments and everything still existed, but it was like, hey, let's build Nuketown and have a story here. And that's where scenario paintball started, or I think comes from in the terminology. What about you?
Um, See, down with the East Coast, I found that it's the scenario paintball was kind of came from, yeah, that same feel. Like it was just like, okay, speedball, it's open. We wanted a different terrain, and they put it into the woods, and then kind of were like, let's give a bit of a story to it. Let's try to get our players engaged. Like make
Right.
them feel a little more about what's going on instead of, okay, it's five guys running at five guys. Um, let's try to get a little bit of a story lick to it that people are interested, so that maybe we can get the game moving. Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Just try to get people so that we don't hit those, what I like to call, battle lines.
Mm-hmm. Now, scenario though is the paintball fielded game, not the paintball markers that you bring on, which I think with the prominence of Milsim paintball is where the confusion happens a lot, because I have a lot of guys, friends who say, oh yeah, we're going to a scenario game, and it's like, oh man, these damn speedballers showed up, and I'm just like, it's a scenario, it's a story, unless it's like marker limited, then yeah, they are going to show up. And I'm noticing that trend a lot being in the MagFed community, is how many people are saying like, oh, this isn't a MagFed only game, and no, because it's not going to go for their storyline.
No,
So,
and I agree with you 100%. And that I think that is where we should maybe, like, really as a community, kind of as we're doing tonight, try to get people to understand. If someone posts it's a scenario game, that means it is a game of paintball and there is a scenario, but it is open to all classes of paintball.
mhm.
Like,
And
is the
assume
way I feel
open
about it.
unless otherwise stated.
Exactly. Yep.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's happening a lot. And I don't blame like the speedball guys for wanting to come out. Like there's a lot of really good scenario players who are speedball oriented, getting to play with him a bunch in the past couple weekends. Dreadcam from Ontario here, he's part of the Punishers, and they're all
Yep.
speedball markers. But I'll be frank, like I am quite happy to have them on my team when I hit the paintball field because I've seen them make those bump ups and stuff. But that's the thing is that like no, they only do big games and scenarios, but they bring their hoppers. And so like going into it, so then Milsim paintball, lots of classifications within that. I think the term Milsim came about because when you go on a paintball website, there's two types of markers. There's your speedball space guns, then there's your or styled markers because pumps technically would fall under that too, and then there's the scenario ones where let's make this look as realistic as possible. Hence where the first strike marker came from.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that a lot, actually. I think that is exactly where it came from, and that's it. There's two very clear, defined lines between scenario, what we would class as the milsig or the milsim style, military simulated style of paintball markers, and then there's your speedball kind of pump category. And I mean, there are a few pumps that fall into the milsim style. I mean, there's the T68 tactical shotgun, which was made by Rap back in the day, which actually had one of those. The Dookie shotgun is also very milsim styled. Like it's got that World War II trench gun look to it.
Hammer 7 with its mods.
Yep. Oh man, I'm trying to think. A guy down here made it look like the Terminator 2, like sawed off, and he loves it. It's like, so yeah. I mean that's I think that's where it came from, and there's variants of like Milsim, I guess, that are announced to me. Like if someone said, "Hey, it's a Milsim game," I would just be like, okay, cool. I would assume that that meant we were trying to limit our rate of, like, our
Which
rate of fire.
I've
Like,
actually
our rate of fire, our carry, our ammunition, or paint. Like, there's a limit. There's going to be some gear regulations or rules put into place. Is what that
right.
tells me.
So here's where my question then becomes. So it's a milsim game, and this is where the confusion can be. So milsim game to me means that marker limitations, which I've been to a couple of those before. So that means like X7s, A5s are allowed, 98 customs, just because there's the more common one, but no DMs, no E-Techs, no other markers like that. But you can bring in other ones. But then when you say, okay, tac caps or 150 round only on the field at one time, is that milsim or is that scenario? The paint limitation.
See, that plays both, I think. I don't think you can clearly define that, like, a paint limitation is strictly one or the other. Because scenario could have played that way. Like, you could put, that could be a scenario rule that's in that you can only carry this much. But I think I think you could also put it in the milsim category as well, because like tac caps are, I mean, it really depends on the organizer, to be honest. I mean, it's the organizer or the group that is running the scenario or milsim game idea or definition of what they think is milsim and what they feel is scenario.
Right.
Like there's not going to be a clear. Me and you could talk about it all night tonight, and someone still may go, I disagree with those guys. This is my idea of what milsim is, and that's how their games are. So
right, but that's what I think is the confusion, is that you can mirror the words together though. Is that like a milsim scenario game is a game with marker limitations and designed to have an aesthetic around it, but something like saying, oh, that's a scenario marker, that's where I disagree, and that's where the terminology I think isn't right. And yeah, like, and I think that's where people's thinking, it needs to change mostly, is that milsim scenario is a combination of paintball. It is not one or the other. And that was what helps makes the biggest difference for it. So then leading into big game is that that's what I was going to say. Oh, right. So we've covered what Milsim is, which is general marker gear limitation. Scenario is the game itself. When is it a big game and when is it not a big game?
Well, big game. I guess a big game determines on the number of players. Really, I mean, what we would class as a big game. So, I mean, if you're used to 25 players
Mm-hmm.
at your local field, say, on a regular basis, like that is a walk-on Sunday, we'll
Mm-hmm.
say. If someone's hosting a game and they're looking at, you know, 75 players or 100 players to the individual, that's a big game. Like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, if you're used to 25 players on a walk-on, and you get a game where there's going to be 100, you've tripled what you're used to. So yeah, I mean, big game is, for me, I guess, if someone says big game to me, I expect 100 plus players, easy. Like, I'm going to have a whole team of like grunts that are going to run out with me.
So here's where my distinction is, and I disagree with you on, because like you said,
Okay.
though, is that a big game can be like X number of people. So to me, a big game actually means a continuous day of play with ongoing objectives, but then special missions throughout. So here would be my distinction or throwback to you. So you go to a field, it's 100 people, not a huge field, a decent size though, so you're not crammed on the field. 100 people. It is a 5-hour game with, like I just described, that to me is a big game. Or if it's 100 people there, but you play 30-minute to an hour games and you play 5 missions, distinction, and the field is reset every time, is that a big game or a scenario game?
I think they go both. I down here, usually a scenario, a big game is basically 100 plus people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're in for a magnitude of people, and for the Atlantic provinces anyway, we're a pretty small community of paintballers. I mean, when we say the Atlantic provinces, I count New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia,
Mm-hmm.
and Newfoundland as well for Atlantic, but the Maritime provinces in general. Like, most of our games are big games, but they're scenarios. So like, we're getting,
Well, yeah, like
100.
a big game would always be a scenario. But what I'm saying is that this is more from the marketing side, because like Daniel says, is like big games here last like 45 to 60 minutes. Like, I can agree, like there are those ones, like it's still a big game, but what I think throws people off is you say big game in Ontario, people are thinking 200 plus people.
Yep.
Big game out east might not be. I do what I would call scenario games at my local field, where I host 5 missions that can be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour long game. And to me, those are scenario games because while there's a theme, I have props that are there and they're longer games. It's not a big game because it's not drawn as many people. But we still, like you had mentioned, like you have your walk on days of like 5 to 10. We usually draw like anywhere from 20 to 50. Like we've seen that big range there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, so a big game can be that, but I would lean them more towards scenario games because it's not about the largest and using all of the field at one time. Like something like Ottawa D-Day with Sega annual big game, Flag Raiders. I forget the name. Like those big game PRZ. Well, actually, pretty much everything at PRZ is a big game because there's so much of that field. But that's what I mean is like using something like all of those is a distinction you want to make, but more of like what's a general conception of this, because so many words have been blended together for marketing purposes, you don't
Yeah.
really see it used correctly. So like to even like bring it back like to the Milsim and scenario, if we say, hey, it's a mag fed game, but we're allowing tack caps and pumps with 10 round tubes. Are you still a mag fed game or are you a limited paint game? Similar kind of thing.
Yep. Um, yeah. See, it's kind of tricky because we've almost done away with what players call a big game on the East Coast. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's scenario games, and then there's basically, well, there's actually all of the above, really, because then there's scenario magfed only games, and then there's just a scenario kind of open game, which is there's still objectives, there's still story, there's still, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's they really do blend together. I
and
think
and I'm with you. Like, and I agree. Like, they do blend together, but that's why you want a distinction of what's one to another, because there are so many big games. Like, well, even using this year as the example, I have some buddies who joined the Maple Leaf squad, and they were traveling around to big games every weekend, and I'm just like, every weekend you could go to a big game in Ontario, or like with at least like a 4 hour drive, any big game every weekend, some in the US, some here, some out east, and it was, or like
yep.
over towards Ottawa, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to go to so many big games. I'm like, I like the smaller ones as well, but that's why, like I said, like the distinction's there, and people will say, oh, it's a big game, and it's like, no, it's more of like, it's a scenario day, and then
Yep.
the Milsim stuff from there.
I think maybe our I think maybe in general we should just stop categorizing them as one of the three, because we're leading ourselves to believe that, oh, if this is what it is, so if we say this is a scenario game, this is what we should expect.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a big game, we should expect this. And if it's,
Even
a
better, so
milsig, so maybe we should take the barrier down and just be like, what style of, what am I looking for out of my paintball weekend this
exactly.
weekend?
And again, to use it like, well, people, paintballers are complaining this a lot, and don't get me wrong, I get where they're coming from, because we see the airsoft world a lot from the Milsim perspective.
Yes.
Is I want to see better props, I want to see better events and organization, and they're like, I go to a big game and I'm fighting over like a half torn up flag. Well, that sucks. That's not a big game, but it's a scenario objective, and
See, that is what I would classify as a big game. That right there, that is exactly what you described. For us, that's a big game. Like, hey, we're gonna go play elimination or team deathmatch. Big games have nothing except CTF or like storm the tower or something.
mm-hmm.
Like, they're basically a single-minded scenario per se that just contain a lot of people. If you said big game, that's what I would assume we're going to do. There's going to be a lot of paint flying.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually open class. Big games are open class all the time. Very rare do I hear someone label, down this way anyway, as a big game in my mind. A big game is open class, all the paint you can shoot, limited in scenario and resources, and we're going to go fight over that flag for 8 hours. That's what we're going to do. That's big game for me. When someone says big game, I'm like, all right, we're just taking cases of paint with us, and we're going to run out there and die.
Just shoot.
Yeah, we're just going to shoot at the other guys because they're wearing blue.
That brings me back to a point then. So if it's a big game and it's that like hours and hours and it's constant respawns and stuff like that, and Brad has a good point, like the classification does help for knowing what you're getting into, because like you just said, like, I want to go to a big game, I'm taking my skid of paint between me and my 10 friends and we're gonna shoot through it all. But
yeah.
When it's something like hey, you get 3 lives, here's the laptop objective or VIP escort, things like that. Again, you're getting into your scenario. And that's part of it too, is like we said, like, scenario games started in the woods when there was a story. And one of the best jokes I've ever heard was from Jamie at Sector 57. He's a ref. And he says, okay, someone came up to him and goes, hey, can we do this mission game? He goes, no, that mission would suck. And you know why it would suck? I'm going to get bored watching that. And I don't pick games that I think you're going to like to play. I'm going to pick games that are entertaining for me to watch. And why he said that was because I don't just want to see you sit in a bunker and hold it for a half hour and see guys constantly running at you, because I want to see people move and make cool moves and do all of these different things and attack and flank and communicate, because that's interesting to me. That's the type of game I'm trying to draw out of all of you. And that's the scenario. There's a story, something going on here, there's a twist. It's get a guy from one end of the field to another. Oh, by the way, two players from each team are carrying the other colored team band, and they're going to switch at any point when they want to. That's a scenario. And then a big game was that scenario concept taken to a larger and larger level. And those are what started it. So is a big game always a scenario? 90% of the time, yes. It could be something as simple though at the very end of Living Legends. Everyone's trying to hit the slapstick and there's nothing but paint flying. Is that a scenario? Not really. Is it a big game? Yeah, there's about 1,000 people from each side trying to shoot you. And that's what I'm saying, like, there's those little distinctions that you start to realize and understand, and then it makes it easier to categorize correctly. So when I brand my mini games, I don't say, oh, this is a big game, it's going to be huge, it's going to be amazing. It's like, no, it's going to be incredibly tactically focused, it's incredibly complex to start, and then chaos ensues after. And the story I've written or created or the field dynamics that I've set up was for that very purpose. So that's why I say there's a scenario versus a big game. And I'll use an example. I've been plugging a decent amount, so I can continue to do it. The first event that I'll be hosting at Sector 57 in June. Wait, June. No, sorry, May. It goes May, June, July. So May is 4 missions. I'm going to work on a 5th one, but 4 missions where there's a story going into the game, and every mission will affect how your team plays the next one. So the very first one is very simple. There's going to be 3 laptops in a very CQC field, capture 2 out of the 3 objectives, and then you get a riddle for a passcode. Okay? The passcode will be used at the very end. That's a very simple one. The second mission, though, is a play on that. So your guy who captured the laptop is going to be held hostage by a third faction. So there's the 2, red and blue, and then there's going to be a third team who shoots everybody except for their mini team themselves. 2 guys are going to hold him hostage, and the attackers, have to get somebody there, release him, and get him back to their base with the laptop in tow. If he gets shot, you miss out on a bonus objective, but you still have to recapture the laptop. The attackers, at the same time, want to shoot the VIP to stop the bonus objective, as well as capture their own laptop that's guarded by a third faction. Like I said, it's incredibly complex, but you hit the field and it's like, okay, shoot the red guys, shoot the guys with the yellow tape, they're going to shoot at everybody, and then go find a laptop and bring it back. So, like I said, that's a very scenario, and I've made it very complex to get onto the field, but once the paint starts flying, it's not as complicated. It gets simplified very, very quickly. And then the third mission is in the woods. Again, the third faction's there. They'll have envelopes that you have to go find them, shoot them, get them to drop the envelope, and then bring it back to your spawn. So, again, interesting. If you got the bonus objective from the previous mission, though, then you get to insert into 2 spots onto the field. And if you just won the objective, then you get your respawn, but you don't get to insert in 2 places. So you don't have as good a field coverage, but it's still the chaos of those players are inserted into random locations, well hidden. One of them can go hide in the very corner of the field, duck down into like the bushes. No one has any idea where he is. Or there's going to be somebody who's like, I'm just going out guns a-blazing. I'm just going to shoot everything that I see move in those bushes.
All right.
So again, is it an organized day? Yes. If I get 50 plus people, is it a big game now? No, because it's still a scenario-focused story. Now, the final battle will make it feel like a big game. So then, if I took this entire story concept, though, in each mission, and if I say put everyone on the biggest field of the day, and said, okay, there's 3 laptops hidden out there, you have to capture 2 and bring them back to your base. By the way, the field will be constantly going and playing all day. And then, again, there's people inserted, go find them, shoot them, bring their envelopes back. Things like that is like, you can do it, but because you never get to reset the field, That's why I think they are big games, but I don't like them as scenario, and I wouldn't want to broadcast it as a big game, even if I had the numbers to technically say I was a big game.
Okay. So now that you've made a plug, I'm going to make a plug.
Oh, go right ahead.
I think, based on what you had just said on the style of game, I'm assuming that you have just described, because based on that scenario, I would say that is the style of game you would like to play.
For the most part, like simpler organization, because again, like I make it complex at the very beginning. The only special props I've used are 3 laptops that are at the field though, and then little envelopes from the dollar store. And that's why I liked it, was because I made complex games with simple props. That's my philosophy when it comes to designing them. Simple props, complex game, and then go.
Fair enough. So you need to come to Nova Scotia and play in a keep calm scenarios game. Probably, I would say, one of the disavowed games. Why? Because you would have the time of your life. So people are assigned squads. When you sign up, if you and your buddies come play, you can play for the CIA disavowed. You could also play for the Russians, red and blue. Now, we have taken the liberty. There is a local team around here that usually gets to play as our third team. They are the Three Kings Mercenaries. In most cases, the Three Kings are a mag-fed pump play, for depending on the scenario that Keep Calm Scenarios is putting out and the story. But depending. There's always 3 factions. You will get assigned a commander who is in charge of blue team. There will be a commander who is in charge of red team. He will then be given squads and lieutenants. They all break off into like little squads. So if you register, each squad usually has so many, and they have a lieutenant, and like they follow their chain of command up to a big chain of command. So like orders come down from the top based on the scenario. Now this takes an extremely amount of coordination between referees, and this is what makes it so great, is because not only do the players get to decide how they're going to deal with their objectives. So basically, usually the games are broken up into 40-minute chunks. And the way it would work is a referee will greet you at your start point. He will hand you an envelope. He will go find the commander, and he will hand that to his commander and say, "Hey, commander, I'm your team's ref. This is your objective from your HQ. This came in, basically part of the story. The president has said this is what you're doing. It's off the record. If you get discovered, well, America had nothing to do with it." So then you give them their objective. And their objective says, these are the things you need to do. Could be anything. How you go about doing it is your business.
Okay.
This is what you need to do. So if there were props in play, so some of them are set up SAM sites at these locations. Every player, when they come to a Keep Calm game, gets a kit. Their kit has what squad they're in, usually their meal tickets for lunch. If there are specifics around what their squads can do, most squads have individual roles inside of them. So there's basic gunners. You could be an engineer. You could be a sniper. So then squads kind of do their own things, and then on top of that, the field has its eyes and ears as its what we like to call the scenario referees. And their job is just to kind of watch the scenario unfold and see how it is going.
Okay. So go ahead.
Carry on. No.
So your is like you said, like it's like mine, and yes, I definitely do want to come to one of those. I'm gonna probably do that in 2018 when my wedding season finally calms down amongst my friends.
Perfect.
But here's the bigger question then. So that's scenario focused, big game.
Yep.
Mine is a scenario focused organized game or big game sort of thing. So, do you not think that, again, to go back to the paintball industry, there has been a disconnection between making a good scenario game versus making the biggest game possible? So
Yeah.
I just want to pump out more players. And don't get me wrong, field owners, I do not fault you. I do not think it was wrong decision. You want to get people out there. You want to get more money in your pocket while still giving a good service. I get it. But what I do want to mention is the concept that, hey, we went from having 1,000 people to only 800. We got to bring something more. Let's bring in fireworks or like more celebrities or more prizes. And I'm like, I think that's where we're missing it, is scenario paintball needs to come back to the scenario part, because Milsim paintball is growing. To bring it all the way
Yep.
back again, we said, like, I see more people with MegFed and tactical markers in fields and open play than I do the normal speedballers. Like, are they still coming out? 100% they're still coming out. Like, I still see all the electronic markers when we hit it,
Yep.
but when I'm looking at things in Canada, at least, and I do agree that Canada is a more unique scenario market than the US is, because I was watching D-Day, for example, put on by Go Sports, and I was just like, oh my god, there's like more electric hoppers than anything else, and everyone's running a Tippmann 9, or not Tippmann, X7 or A5 hopper styled marker, just shapes of it, I could pick it out immediately. I saw like 4 guys with Megs, and then I go to something like PRZ's open event, or even with Sega's big game that we went to this year, a lot of MagFed players. Like, there was a good chunk of them there. And like, some people have been commenting as well, like, I'm going to play MagFed every time. Awesome, that's your Milsim style that you bring to the scenario game. I'm going to go in what's going to let me probably shoot the most paint as possible. And then when I hit my last 500 paint, then I'll switch to MagFed. But that's my personal preference for my scenario paintball game. So in the market overall, what do you think there should be a little bit of a focus on, or what do you think people are asking for? Is it milsim focus games, scenario focus games, or big games in general?
To be honest, I don't think us as players have any fucking clue what we're looking for. To
We're
be
horrible
absolutely,
at
we're
giving
horrible. Like, if you give us what we want, we'll just be like, that's not what I want. I want this, and then people will change it. So, I mean, we we always want something different. Like, that's the trick, I think, for us as players. Like, I don't want to go to do the same thing all the time. Even if the scenario is different, and you know, we need these breaks of like kind of experiencing different styles. And I think this is where the confusion comes in, is that players have become so locked into a specific type. I play MagFed. I play Pump. I play Speedball. No, you don't. You all play paintball.
I
And
play the East Coast only. Wait, what?
yeah, like I think that's the problem. Like, we've become set in our ways
Mm-hmm.
of like a specific style of a sport we love, and I think it changes from player to player based on like, if they don't like, you play a specific style of game based on I don't know, maybe depending on what you want out of your outcome. But like, it's really weird. Like, you'll hear a lot of magfight guys, and I will be absolutely honest, that will go to a game, and if they get hammered by a bunch of like speedball guys, they're just like, oh, they're overshooting, because like, in a lot of cases, our magfed guys have become this, what I hate to say it because I'm a magfed guy too, but like, we become like these elitists, and we're like, oh, we have this certain style, like it's a tactical. We have this idea that it's going to be a slower paced game, but there's going to be action and there's going to be tactics applied, not just pepper the shit at anything that moves. And then, like, you know, people get
Which,
thrown into the mix, which is really bad on our behalf.
yeah, and one thing I'll say too, though, is that, like, I always hear the comment every time is, oh, MegFed players are less scared to run up and shoot people. And on a walk-on day, I will usually somewhat agree with you. the MagFed player versus the walk-on speedballer or walk-on renter will, yes, they'll be more aggressive. But I have seen at big games, MagFed players are only at the back, and it's the speedballers that are leading their charge. And then I've seen the mix of the two. And my my comment to all of that is that I'll tell you one thing is I can run faster with my reflex rail and a pod pack than I can with my die dam and my megs. And while the die dam is super light to run when I just have my 13-inch on it, it's still easier to maneuver with a speedball marker and the lightness of it that I can get my rundowns easier and bunkers and bump up faster. But when you put tactical players together, they'll generally work a little bit better together. As the other thing that I've noticed is that, like, I have my MagFed buddies that I am not as worried about them watching my right or my left flank, but again, I'm also invested in the MagFed community that I recognize those guys, and I'm not as invested in the speedball community anymore. And most of the guys that I know play tournament, and they don't come to the scenario games anyways, so there's that flip side. And Dan has a good comment here in that I want to bring up in like the last 15 minutes or so. So I'm just going to read his out in general. It says, the issue here in Canada is that companies almost don't care about events up here. This is just my thoughts on this. Events in the USA have company tents set up with reps. They have techs. There is media from the industry. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Dan, I gotta agree with you, man. I really do. Like, they almost forget we exist up here. Hey, man, we play ball all season long.
Mm-hmm.
We play ball in the snow. A lot of southern states forget that, like, you know, our summers don't stay 30 degrees.
Yeah. Now,
all year round, right? And there's no really big vendors up here. Like,
now
the last time you guys
in
had
the
gone
East
to
Coast, like Maritimes, you guys suffer a lot more, and I will.
Oh god, we don't see nothing.
Yeah, you guys see next to nothing. Part of what it is too, Dan, is some locations can't host fields as well. PRZ has a nice open field setup that they usually set people up for. Decent number of guys show up there. Then the next community, Wasega's big game. They have their indoor facility, and they are great about getting the guys in there, getting it all set up, and then they sell through stuff. But that's part of the problem too, is that I've seen guys show up, and I don't think I saw any product move off their shelves. Like, people don't go to big games anymore and buy markers, and that's part of the problem is that there's not the people showing up to sell markers or big and high, not markup, but profit items that are going to be there. One of the teams that's probably the best at showing up, Widowmaker and Patch Panel, same company, both out of Peterborough. Evan does a great job about going to big games, but he's not selling milsigs like left, right, and center. He's selling patches left, right, and center. So he has a smaller, like, he's a sub-market, or like a culture within the paintball community to sell a patch. And those are what I see going, flying off the shelves, and they're changing left over right, like getting them out there. But the walkie-talkies never move. He brought
that's
six.
Not true. That's not true. That is not true. We went to PRZ's, one of the tier 1 PRZ games. Evan was there, and I tell you what, Evan sold probably 7, 10, 12 walkie-talkies a day.
Okay. Well, okay,
we
tier
were
1
raking them out. As soon as we got there, we were like, give us those. Like, hey,
okay,
you got any more of these? I got 4 more buddies that want them.
So that's a good example, though, is that you're right. Like, a tier 1 game, I could definitely see that happening. Again, it's a Milsim focused group that's going to sell them. I went to the PRZ Open Class Asylum Series opener last year. Didn't see the walkie-talkies move. Patches, like I said, going off left, right, and center. Yep. Badlands was there. They have their kill house section, and it was like barely moving, but like the pods and other things, those were selling through. And I think that's almost part of it is that, like, the eye candy at the field. It's this weird thing is I'm like, being a scenario player and like pretty much filling out my kit is like I don't need to go to a big game to buy stuff anymore. The only company I go to look for at a big game at these days is Armadillo, and I just go to just be like, okay, what new toque am I gonna buy? Because I already have two sets of dreads and I need a couple more. And yeah, like that's the company I look for just because it's the treat to do it. But unless I like, hey, the Wasega's big game, I'm appreciative that they're there because I double threaded my tank and I had to go buy a new 68 just to be able to play that day. Unless I was going to rent a Steely, which was not happening. So I think, Daniel, you're right. Like, we don't see a lot of reps up here, but I've also messaged US companies, like, and they usually say, well, we'll let our distributors do that. And who are the distributors in Canada outside of the MagFed community? Badlands? Badlands? Badlands.
No, there's another one. Oh my god.
By
No.
by
Paintball,
PBL is gone.
paintballgear.ca.
PayPal website. Have you ever seen them at a game though? Not to
No,
knock them.
I've never seen them at a game, but I've
They're
ordered
there.
a lot off of their website from Vancouver.
I've also seen them go down a little bit, but I have heard that they're resurging. Who am I thinking? Ripple Industries. Tom doesn't go to events anymore because he gets stuck teching most of the time. He doesn't move a lot of product. But when he sponsors the game and throws some stuff in there, then he'll see the traffic on his website. Also, we'll see someone else. Even the guys that I deal with in the GTA region is Combat Pursuits or Premium Paintball. They're on the website.
Yep.
I've never seen them at event. They're also very speedball focused, so I don't really fault them too much. Valken, Alex just mentioned. I haven't actually seen Valken at an event particular. I've seen MaxTac, Milsig, obviously. There are the guys who run Virtue. They usually team up with the Pump, like the local Pump community.
Yep.
But they're just pretty much just their Virtue stuff. And then HK I've seen a couple times up at Wasaga, but I think it's more of like there's a mini supplier up there. There we go. Kyle Watson is actually saying that Badlands is, or Ripple Industries is supplied by Badlands now, which doesn't surprise me because by PBL, who they were with before, has gone down. Like I think they've closed all their physical shops. They're online only.
I think Badlands is basically owned practically by GI. I don't like. I mean, I'm not. There's a lot of
Pretty
shit going
mu-
on in the paintball community right now, but I'm pretty sure like
They're not directly. It's more that GI has so much share that you might as well be. Badlands is like the only supplier for paint, so you're shooting GI. Valken is great in shops to pick up, and if you have BYOP at your fields, yeah, grab that case of graffiti. I totally recommend it. But
see now. Luckily for us, the East Coast, for example, the East Coast of Canada, most of our fields are Valken sponsored fields, and we shoot Valken all the time.
yeah,
Like,
well, the guys at that I'll sometimes hit up at Combat Pursuits, which is like the premium guys, they do Valken. That's who they have. But it's what you need to have happen for the fields to do that is you have to have a distributor for Valken. East Coast has a distributor for Valken probably, but I don't see them as much in Ontario. Like I see the paint boxes, but I don't see Valken being shot outside of Combat Pursuit. Everywhere else I see is it's usually GI that's being shot. And Richard commented like Social goes to a lot of Viper events. Yeah, Social Paintball is amazing for coming to stuff, but Viper doesn't really come up to Canada. Again, that's kind of the issue is we have our own closed market and our own closed owners and operators up here. So again, we're Canada. It's the typical thing is we don't see a lot of US interest up here. It's usually the vice versa. So
yeah, we're going down.
that being said, we have the best YouTube stars, and that's really just what really matters. No comeback there.
Sure. No, I got nothing for that.
Well, and I actually do mean this quite honestly, is there's Slim, Wolf, Aztec, East Coast is Nightmare. Took a second. Dreadcam. I think that's.
Uh, well, yeah, that's
And those are the
those are
bigger
the
ones.
those are like
Milsim.
the the big names, I would say.
And then there's Pistol Pete, there's PB Panda. Now that being said, though, is the U.S. has a lot more recognizable players at events, but not so much social media. I've noticed that as well too. Brad Phillips has a great comment too. Is that border issues always make it interesting as well. Bradley from Maritime.
Bradley from Maritime. He's referring to Hooligan.
Oh, Hooligan. Okay, yeah. Oh, yes. Hooligan, Jester, Tuna, all those guys out there. Yeah, it's bad that I messed that up because they're again they're more social. I say like social media, paintball famous than like player famous. Same with George from Ontario for the die community. Again,
Yeah.
huge player, but more like the social media, which I think is the best part. So yeah, I think those are like all of that. So it kind of wraps it up for the Milsim big game and scenario talk. Any last comments, Jester?
I think we covered it all. I think what we need to do as community or players is before you go invest into a game and say I'm going there, find out, go do your research of what games you're going to. Determine what type of game you want to play and go find games that suit your play. Like if that's what you're looking for, then go do it. Ask questions. Like I
Mm-hmm.
find we just kind of sheep. Don't sheep because everyone said, "Hey, I'm going to this big game." Maybe ask a question or two. What does this big game entail?
Yep. Which
Like,
is
ask
like,
questions.
yeah. And that's one of the big things too is that like, hey, don't assume it's MagFed. Don't assume it's going to be amazing props. Don't assume you're going to have a great time. Check out the field. Check out who's running it. All of that always makes a difference in it. And one of the best things I'll say too is if you're not seeing it locally yourself, do it. The big game was the least distinctive of the topics, but the Milsim and scenario, if you're not seeing it, start it. Like I said, I have organized walk on days are what we actually started with last year, which is the joke for like our mini events, and it's scenario focused and simple props. People don't mind fighting over a flag if you've given them a story and a really interesting way of getting to that flag. It just sucks when, hey, here's an amazing, authentic story. You're going to start at one end of the field, they're going to start at one end of the field, and then somebody has to run and grab a flag.
Well, I mean,
It
people
could be
don't really.
fun. It could be
I
fun,
mean,
but it's to
people don't
inspire
mind
people.
really. People really don't mind running after that simple flag either if you give them a competitive edge.
Yes.
For example, I'll use the MagFed Pickup League that we were talking about pre-show. Um, it's very similar to our MML, the Maritime MagFed League.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 events all season. We have, I think it's eight teams that like fight to get into this thing, and it's the most intense 5-on-5 tactical MagFed only paintball all season. Guys die for it. Like they're
See,
waiting. They're foaming at the mouth. Like
this is what I
they've
want to
had.
see in the field. And this is what I want to see on the in games and stuff like that. I want to see the tactical tournaments happen in Ontario. I was talking to Evan about this the other day at the MagFed pickup game. Is that we have the bodies, we just never have the organization or the field. Like I don't know what it is, and I've seen them try to be start locally, and no teams want to go out to them like, oh yeah, maybe not. And it's like I almost think it's to that point where you have to just start it, even if only 10 people show up and it was supposed to be 5v5. No, it's 2v2 now for the rest of the day. Find a buddy and you're tagging up. And
Well,
I think that's where
we
the grassroots needs to happen here.
we started ours based on the 5-on-5, and basically the way we got people in was like, hey, this is. We used our sponsors to kind of get people to come. Like we went and found people and said, "This is what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is our rule sets. This is what we've made. We want to sell it. Let's try to make it appealing to the players. How can we?" So we went to different companies. Widowmaker, for example, was one of them. He's been a big big sponsor of the MML, and
Patch love. I got a Widowmaker
yes,
patch.
some patch love, man. I got a Widowmaker T-shirt because I was on one of the winning teams. I got a Widowmaker T-shirt.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
just got the patch yesterday, the green one that he had done with the
Oh, the new
reflective.
ones.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
super excited about that.
I mean, what we did, we got teams to commit,
Hmm.
and we were just like, this is what it costs. It gets you your field fee for the 3 events. They're across the Atlantic provinces. We did them in each province because we're close enough. And it gets you on different fields that we didn't see. Like we get to travel. So, for example, there's 3 big events across the summer,
Hmm.
basically. So March till like August, say.
Yep.
And there's 2 events going on 2 day. Well, they broke them up into 4 team groups. So there's 2 fields on day 1 that are playing, and everyone's playing for points. And then day 2 was in another province. We played here, and there was 2 fields, and then people were playing for points. And then the championships of the finals was in Prince Edward Island at a place called Crossfire.
Yeah, Crossfire
Fantastic
Creek.
field. No,
No.
Crossfire Paintball in Cavendish, Prince Edward Island.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of
I
the
would
wrong one.
advise best paintball in Atlantic, Canada, in my opinion. I love that field. Go check it out. There is a trench field, and it is my favorite field. Man, when you run into a trench and you disappear, it's like
Where'd you
scary
go?
as hell.
Where'd you go?
It's
Where'd you go?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we just got people to commit, and we started with 4 teams, and that's what we ran with. We got 4 5-man teams, and it went. It was fun. It was awesome. And as soon as we posted video and footage up of that,
Well, that's what I mean.
and
Is like just do it, even if there's only a couple people, and then once the word of mouth starts, then it gets
oh,
bigger and
the
better. And
buzz
it
starts going.
well, even I'll use PRZ as the example because that's a field that everyone should have been flocking to for years, and they couldn't get it off the ground. They could not do anything. And then the guys at Synergy Paintball did some events, put some media out about it, and people were like, "Oh my god, you can go here!" And they just got more and more. And PRZ is not local, like to anyone. Like I'm on the east side of Toronto. Like I'm out of Toronto. I'm technically in like Kawartha kind of region, like Durham region and stuff like that, which is like the boonies for people who are like live in Scarborough or like even like the outside of Toronto. They're like, oh no, that's the boonies. And for me, it was like a 2-hour drive. And there's guys on the other side of Toronto that are going to these like every other weekend. Like that field could pull, but it still took the time. And
Yep.
don't be worried that people show up or don't show up. It's just make it consistent, make it constant, then people can bank on it happening, and then you will, if you will build it, they will come kind of joke. So
Right. I mean, we made an 18-hour drive to go to PRZ
hmm
for an event. Like we were just like, we're going. Like we've
well,
seen videos, and
like
we were like, we need to be there.
yeah, and Ottawa D-Day this year. Like, we talked about like the maritime guys like Brad, like Hooligan, and all those guys. Like, I didn't like I knew about D-Day. Like I saw the posters. I'm like, whatever. And then the podcast started talking about it, and then I saw more media. Like they had a huge media push last year, and
Yep.
the owners have even said like, well, we barely did anything with the investment in media this year, though. I think it's going to be huge. That's the thing, is you make a huge push or investment, wait for the return to slowly kick in. Like it's not something that happens right off the bat. It takes time, and don't be scared for the investment. It's more fun than you think half the time. So even using the TTP as the example, like we've started off and it was like I could barely get 1 show a month, and I promised bi-weekly shows and stuck with it. Finally regular shows started happening, or content, and that's just what it is it's like, don't be scared to start, just be scared to give up halfway through.
Yeah, you just got to kind of push through and keep making a strive. Like, I mean, for example, D-Day, as you had said, I think last year there was probably maybe 10, 15. I'm not, these are not exact numbers, but I think there was 15 thereabouts folks from the Maritimes that went, and I would say that number doubled this year. That
Mm-hmm.
it looks like we may hit 30 that are going to make this trip because they came back. They said it was awesome. It was like, it was wicked. We need to go. Like, it was a blast. And then they were talking about pump clinics and pistol clinics and, you know, all these different, and everyone was just like, man, we need to go. We need to see these other fields. Like,
Yeah,
I,
100%.
I play my fields every weekend. I've seen these fields. I know them in and out. I know where I can go. I know how I play these fields. Let's go check out some fields where I need to rely on the guys up there.
Hmm.
I'm gonna find a guy that, like Tyler, if he's going to D-Day, I'm gonna find him if he plays there often, and I'm gonna be like, okay, you need to show me the ropes. Let's do this. Like, let's go. Meet people, get to know people.
And that's one of those things too, though, is that like to go there, make friends, join the paintball community, add more friends on Facebook. Like it's all that social networking that we can do, and that's just where you see so much more content happening. So yeah, like I said, guys, like don't be scared to make the drive. Don't be scared to try and do it locally. Just don't be scared. It's worth the time. It's worth the jump. I've done it with the podcast. I've done it with mini events. Jester's on here now, going to jump on for the podcast because I'm going to drag his ass every 2 weeks onto the show. More people are going to be coming on. Like, it's one of those things is like, don't be scared of starting it, because if you don't start it, you're only just finishing it. So
I mean, yeah, I mean, prime example. This podcast tonight is a good example. We met through the other Jester, through Nate. Like, he brought us together. He was like, hey, Tyler's doing this show about this. You should talk to Tyler. You guys might have a lot in common about this topic. And then we took the steps, right? He
yeah.
put us in the place, and we then just made the connections. Like, you were like, hey, man, what's up? I'm Tyler. I'm like, hey, I'm John. Let's chat. And we did, because we have a common interest and a love for our sport. So why not? Let's talk about this. Like, this is what we need to do to grow our sport as a whole. Like, I don't want to play the same guys every weekend. I want new guys. I want new girls. I want everyone that wants to run through the woods or through the grassy fields with paint flying over their faces. I want you all to come play with us.
And
Because
the other thing too is like John just said, just don't take your time on social media for paintball to inspire people to buy a certain marker or play a certain way. Take the time to entice people to come play at your local field or entice people to come play at an event. Get them on the field, don't get them in the shop. That's where we want to see paintball go again, is let's get it on the field and get it out of the paycheck or like the pocketbook.
Exactly. I have a bag full of guns. Or markers, my bad. I should be proper on it. I have a bag full of paintball markers.
I have a bag full of stuff that shows gelatin at people's faces and it goes sploosh.
You want to come play paintball you never played? You show up. Message me on Facebook if you are in my area. I will tell you when I'm going to be at the field, and you can try any one of my marker collection of fury. You want to play pistols? We'll give you pistols. You want to play pumps? We'll give you that. We'll give you speedball guns. I don't care. Come play paintball if you've never done it. Get out there. Live the real life video game.
Have your backup marker not as a backup, as a buddy marker. Hey,
yeah, that's
pay entry. I got a spare whatever mask. I got a marker for you. You can throw a Steely on there. Who cares? Just get people out to play. And when you get to play with other people and you get to play with good equipment instead of just the rental stuff, it is a lot of fun, because I've had my neighbors who are like, nah, I'm not going to go play with you. You're too intimidating. And I'm like, here, take my mask, take my marker. I'll go rent stuff and we'll go play paintball. I'm cool with that.
That's it. Yeah. Did you probably had seen that video. They say the first time that you take a paintball player, like there's a whole video on YouTube, and they were talking about like, buy 2 smoke grenades, run through it, like be crazy. It's not so much that we're paintballing, it's that we're doing it with people that are the same as us, and we're enjoying the moment. Like, it's not so much of what happens in the game, if we win, if we lose. Man, you could get wrecked all day. I've had some wicked fun games where I haven't won a game, but those moments that were in that game were epic.
Oh, it's just the fun. And to Daniel's comment, like, he's like, grow the sport. No, get on the field. That's the one that I want to say. Like, I don't care about growing the sport. I just want to see you get on the field. And like we talked about tonight, is that we said, like, here's Milsim, here's scenario, here's a big game. What do paintballers want to see? And we said we don't even know what we want to see. So my challenge to everyone is figure out what doesn't let you get on the field as often as you'd like, and the friends or the finances or like family or finances, I do get that one. It's probably the hardest one. But if you say I don't feel like it, then figure out what makes you want to feel like it. Either start doing that locally or let people know locally that you want to do it, because it won't happen without, if you never say it, or if you're quiet, then no one ever knows what they need to do to get you on the field. And odds are, if you need to get on the field, then, or sorry, if that's stopping you getting on the field, it's stopping other people from getting on the field too.
So make it, what he's basically said is make a big support group for y'all that you can't get on the field. Be your support buddies and tell each other how to get onto the field.
Exactly.
So that we all can play some paintball.
Sounds good. All right. So, Jester, any fun events coming up for you? And or
me,
where people can find you?
you can find me at my local fields in Atlantic, Canada, because I don't really have a Facebook or a presence for the paintball community because I believe in being on the field. But if you do enjoy hearing my lovely voice and sometimes seeing my mug, you can check me out on the panel. Yeah, talk all things Milsim, paintball, and airsoft. It's fun. It's we bring everybody on. Tyler, I'm sure at some point we'll bring you on. We'll have a big talk about different God knows what's and growing the sport. But yeah, shoot me a message on Facebook if you really want me. You can find me. I'm John, and I'll be on the internet.
Cool. All right. And you can always find me here on the TTP Facebook page. You could also find us on Instagram under Talking Tactical or Talking Tactical Podcast. One of the two. If you search the hashtag TT Podcast, you'll find wherever I'm posting stuff, because that's not used by anyone else. So I stole it. So yeah,
Good work.
check it out here, check it out there. Next event for me, if you want to come out in the GTA region or be like Tuna and fly out from the Maritimes for a paintball event, we're actually having an evening game in the GTA. It's the MagFed Pickup League. We're looking for about 10 more players. If we get 20, it's actually going to be like an 8 o'clock to 2 a.m. game. Like, it's at night, so no excuses about, oh, I have to work during the day and stuff like that. Come on out, it'll be a lot of fun. Small crowd, so very tactical focused. Excited for that. After that, I'm going to be hitting up New York for 0 Hour, so that's going to be a lot of fun over the birthday weekend. So
I'm jealous. I am super jealous of you right now.
I've totally stealing carpooling privileges with people, so that's why I can make that one. After that, keep posted. We'll post stuff up on the page for any hosts or guests who come on the show, like where they're doing and what they're doing. So thanks a lot, guys, for coming to check us out tonight, and we will see you on the field.